I often hear people saying that Lula is a communist. And I really dislike political labels, in part because they mean so many things to different people to the point where they almost mean nothing. And if you're somebody, for example, who believes that, say, Chuck Schumer is a communist, even though Chuck Schumer loves capitalism, he works all the time with Goldman Sachs and with Wall Street, that's the base of his power, or Nancy Pelosi is a communist, if that's something you believe, even though her life and wealth is about trading stocks and she defends the virtues of capitalism every time she's asked, the word kind of loses its meaning. And then I guess you can say Lula is a communist consistent with that worldview because he is similar to, say, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. The reason I reject that view, that argument, that he's a communist, which doesn't mean there aren't valid criticisms of him, is because he was already president of Brazil for 8 years, from 2002 until 2010. So we have evidence of what happens when Lula is president. Brazil did not turn into a communist regime during the 8 years that Lula was the president of Brazil, followed by 6 years of his successor, Dilma Rousseff, who then governed the country from 2010 until 2016 when she was impeached. So Lula's party, the Workers' Party, governed Brazil for 14 years, from 2002 to 2014. In fact, Lula left office. He was term limited out of office in 2010 with an 86% approval rating. 86% approval rating. And one of the reasons was that during the second term of his presidency, the Brazilian economy exploded in growth, in economic growth. It wasn't Venezuela. It was the opposite. Here you see from The Guardian in 2012, the headlines that Brazil's economy had overtaken the United Kingdom's. It grew to become larger than the British economy and became the world's 6th largest. That is not the byproduct of a communist regime. Rapid economic growth that feeds the wealthiest sectors in society, that grows the economy. Or if it is communism, it's the first time communism has succeeded on this level. But beyond that, the kinds of things that Lula did to try and address what has always been the central plague of Brazil, which is the most severe and brutal and violent economic inequality. Things like a social program called Bolsa Familia, which didn't just hand out money to poor people the way the welfare system often works in the United States, but instead conditioned those payments on those people who wanted those payments, doing things like proving their children were vaccinated, proving their children were attending school regularly. That was the only way for them to get those payments. It lifted millions of people out of poverty in Brazil, but it got the praise from all kinds of neoliberal outlets like The Economist, obviously no fan of communism, precisely because it was viewed as the right way to eliminate inequality by not just handing out things to people, but requiring of them things in return that will help the society, like ensuring their children were attending school. Here from 2010, the headline is How to Get Children Out of Jobs and Into Schools. That's what Lula wanted to do, is prevent 12-year-olds from having to work, painting houses or doing domestic work or selling things on the street, and instead be able to go to school by saying to their parents, if you get them in school, we will give you a payment. And here you can see The Economist talking about, quote, by common consent, the conditional cash transfer program has been a stunning success and is wildly popular. It was expanded in 2003, the year Lula da Silva became Brazil's president, and several times since. Candidates for the presidency in 2010 are competing to say who will expand it more. That's how popular it was. It goes on. Brazil has made huge strides in poverty reduction, and the program has played a big part. According to the Fundação Getúlio Vargas, a university, the number of Brazilians with incomes below 800 reais, or $440 a month, has fallen more than 8% every year since 2003. So it worked to get rid of poverty, but at the same time, it avoided any kind of resemblance of communism. Now, in 2016, I interviewed Lula for the first time. I've interviewed him subsequently to that as well, but 2016 was the first time that I interviewed him. It was when I was at the Intercept. You can watch the full interview. It was in Portuguese, but there's English subtitles. And I actually asked Lula about the perception in the West that his Workers' Party and he himself are essentially indistinguishable from, say, Cuban communist regime under Fidel Castro or in Venezuela under Hugo Chavez. This is what I asked Lula, quote, "There is a common belief in the West that the Workers' Party has a lot in common with left-wing parties in Bolivia, Venezuela, Cuba, or Ecuador, and that you and Dilma, his successor, would like to put Brazil on that same path. I also hear this with a lot among Brazilians. Is it true? What are the principal differences between the Workers' Party and those political parties in Venezuela and Cuba?" And this is what Lula responded to me, quote, "Don't be unfair to the Workers' Party. For the love of God, because the Workers' Party has a lot in common with the German Socialist Party and the British Labour Party, also with the French Socialist Party and Spanish Socialist Party. The Workers' Party has a lot in common with all of them." He then went on, "Let me tell you something. The Workers' Party is Latin America's biggest left-wing party. It has never even defined which kind of socialism it follows, since the party says that it will be defined and built by the people itself, and not the Workers' Party with its intellectuals telling us what kind of socialism we want. The Workers' Party is more open than the other leftist parties in Latin America." He went out of his way, as he often does, to distinguish Brazilian left-wing politics under his Workers' Party from the communist regimes of Venezuela, Cuba, and other parts of Latin America. He then concluded by saying this, quote, "We are greater, more diverse. No other political party in the world is more democratic or open than the Workers' Party. Within the Workers' Party, there is anything you can imagine. It's like Noah's Ark, which means anyone or any political belief is welcome in our party. However, one must understand that once something is decided by the Workers' Party, it becomes an obligation to all of its members." Again, this does not mean that I don't think there are valid critiques of Lula. If you ask a member of the Workers' Party these days what they think of me, you will hear probably a lot more negative sentiments than positive ones, even though it was my reporting that revealed the corruption that led to his imprisonment and allowed him to get out of prison, because I've often criticized Lula's party. My husband, who was a member of Congress, joined a party that was designed specifically to critique the Workers' Party as a neoliberal party, as a party that was constantly doing business with global institutions and the wealthiest members of society, which is what it was doing. So by saying he's not a communist, by distinguishing him between, say, Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez or Nicolas Maduro, I'm not defending him, I'm just pointing out the truth. On top of which, even if Lula were a communist, even if you wanted to believe that, Brazil is a very sophisticated, advanced democracy with all kinds of constraints that constrain what he could do even if he wanted to. We just saw that with Bolsonaro, where the Congress and the courts and the media were very active in opposing Bolsonaro's party and constraining what he wanted to do. As I mentioned, the last time the Workers' Party was in office, it ended because in 2016, the Congress voted to impeach Lula's successor, Dilma Rousseff, on corruption grounds. The Supreme Court ratified and approved it, and she peacefully left office. That is not the behavior of a communist dictator, someone who leaves office peacefully because the Congress votes to impeach them and the courts approve them. Those are basic democratic values. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.